vertical.
We have 11 people already? Look at that. How you doing?
What's up, guys?
Well, we're still alive. That's a good start. We're still alive. We survived day one of the apocalypse.
It's here. I mean, Vilcabamba does kind of feel like it's at the end of the world anyway. You know, we feel we have this little pocket here. It feels like some of these events. Wow, look at that sun. Man, just think. A week ago, I was in miserable Chicagoland with 30-degree weather, snow and overcast.
Yep.
How do you see who's on?
Yeah, I was just asking Carl to pull up on his phone so we can check. We don't have our photographer today, so we're not fully set up. We're here in the park. So this is Parque Central, Vilcabamba. Beautiful day. This is the church here that we're sitting in front of. And we're gonna give our thoughts and our little bit of an update on the security situation in Ecuador. Probably, I think it's made like large international press from what
I've heard. I've got a text, a phone call, or an email from every friend, every family, extended family, friends of friends, wanting to make sure we're okay. So it's really, we appreciate it, of course, but it's definitely made the rounds internationally.
Definitely.
In a major way.
So yeah, it looks like I am able to pull the chat up here. Hey guys, big news in Canada, so on and so forth. So hopefully you guys can hear us. If you can't hear us, please let us know. So yeah, we're gonna chat a little bit about some of the events that have taken place and some of our thoughts in general. Obviously, this is a developing situation. 24 hours in here. And we're also going to have in the next few days some interviews with some local, I don't know, is heavy hitters too strong a word? I don't know. But some folks that, some attorneys and some folks that are connected politically as well who can, share their opinion on the current state of things and how this all may play out. But yeah, so kind of without further ado, I think probably to talk about any of this stuff probably more context needed than we even can really give in this format, in this amount of time. But, I would say that just kind of in general, if you're from what we describe, what's often described as the Western world, and you're not familiar, you haven't lived in Latin America, in general, the parameters of everything are different and the way things like safety play out, stability play out, economic things play out, they're way, way different. And the parameters that go into that are different. The reactions are different. The risks are different. So there's a lot of nuance and a lot of context that really would probably take hours to describe well. But I just say that to say, I think over the last 10 or 11 years in Ecuador, experiencing sort of what goes on the ground here versus what makes international news and the way that that's presented tend to be pretty different. And I don't know, how different or the same this one is, this current event is in terms of the way we're experiencing it versus how it's being reported internationally. But we'll do our best to kind of give you an on the ground perspective. You guys have anything before jump into some of the specifics?
Yeah, I can jump on some of the specifics when you're done, yeah? All right. Well, all right, guys. So basically, the limited information that we have is that one of the drug lords from one of the main gangs in Ecuador escaped a jail about 2 or 3 days ago, a jail in Guayaquil. After that, the government put the country into a estado de excepción, state of exception or state of emergency, and basically created a curfew from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. And a few more things. Police could enter homes in Guayaquil area mostly without a warrant. They were basically looking for this gentleman who escaped the jail. And after the curfew was put out, some of the different gangs in Ecuador basically wanted that to end, so they took over some of the jails. They took hostage some of the the guards in the jails. They also went into a TV station to address the president, and basically the whole purpose of this was to for the government to end those restrictions, to end the curfew, to end the sort of the search of the gentleman the gang leader who left,
Nice, Carl.
who escaped the jail. And so there was some turmoil, there was some attacks in various areas in Ecuador, and now the Ecuadorian government has deployed the military to try to put an end to the turmoil. Today everything's been quiet, nothing has actually happened. It looks to me like those criminals are probably afraid, because now the military, the police is all sort of on the lookout for them, and that's the extent of the information. Now we are here in Vilcabamba, Ecuador, Southern Ecuador.
Yeah, tell them, like, so Guayaquil, how far away is that from where we are? Is it 250 miles? I mean,
Guayaquil is it's an 8-hour drive more or less from where we are here. It's a different province, it's a different region, it's the coast, so it's quite a ways away from here. Here we don't really see any of the repercussions from what's going on, because Vilcabamba is a small town, it's off the beaten paths, and everything's completely normal here. Now there are some schools, I think all the schools in the country have they had the day off today. It's Ecuador's going through some hard times now because of where we are. Like I said, we can't really see it or feel it. Everything is pretty much normal here, but yeah, we'll see how that resolves. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, it's just, I think when you see this kind of stuff happen, that it's relative to where you are. So like, we're sharing our perspective for where we are in Southern Ecuador, in Vilcabamba, and you can see, like, there's people at the ATMs, the restaurants are open, there's kids playing soccer, riding their bikes. It's kind of, life is normal here, but that doesn't mean that that's everywhere in the world, right? Or everywhere in Ecuador. So we're just sharing you, we want you to see what it's really like here, what it feels like even during this time, and we want to share that with you. So the other parts of Ecuador, it may not look like this, but here in Vilcabamba, Jesse's here hanging out. People, all of his fans are coming out saying, "Hey, Jesse, can I have your autograph? Hey, Jesse, who's your bodyguard?" I'm like, "No, that's Carl." I'm like, oh, look how, he wears glasses now. Yeah, he does. He looks pretty smart now, doesn't he? Yeah, right.
All right.
That's hilarious. Yeah, so for people who are concerned and kind of want some of those details and to understand, what's actually taking place and how that may look in the future. Again, it's all opinion, but we, between the three of us, we've been here like 25 years or something, so we have probably a better opinion than most, on how some of that may play out. So let me give you a little bit of thoughts on that. So sort of the consensus in the country is that during Rafael Correa's presidency, some of the cartels that obviously are in Mexico and are in Colombia and many other places, and the U.S. and everywhere else, right? Some of the cartels kind of got a little bit of a foothold, particularly in the coastal cities, in general around the ports, but essentially related to the drug trade, related to the export of narcotics, mostly cocaine, is my understanding, and so over the last few years, there's been some of that in Ecuador, whereas previously we really didn't have that sort of aspect of life here. So that has been a change, and what's been very encouraging for me to see is the way Ecuadorians have reacted to that and how they feel about it, right? Ecuadorians are not okay with their country being subject to gang-related violence, cartel-related violence, cartel sort of activity, and so there's been a large-scale response to what we've seen, which has resulted in the election of a president who essentially ran on security as the basis of their getting elected, who's now taken office, as Carl mentioned, made a decree basically declaring war, against the cartels, right? And so that coincided, I think it was the same day actually that the gang leader escaped, if I'm not mistaken. If not, it was within one day. And then as a result of that sort of declaration of war, we had these coordinated attacks in major cities around the country. Some cars were burned. Carl mentioned some of those other events. I believe there's been 8 deaths. And that went on for a handful of hours yesterday. Did not extend into the evening, and there's been no reported activity today. So that's kind of and they're very targeted, right? So it was government institutions plus the television station that were subject to these attacks. So, it's very much like cartel/gangs versus government, right? That's the way this thing is setting up, and the population is 100% behind the government. It's even been unifying to the point where political opponents are making videos expressing solidarity with the Noboa yeah, I was looking for, there's a better word, but the Noboa regime. And so the people here at the end of the day in Ecuador are the ones with the power. And the fact that people are so lined up against this thing and seemingly very willing to take it on is very encouraging. And I think that's really what we all want. I was kind of expecting, or I should say I was expecting, the events of yesterday to kind of kick off further events, and there to be a really kind of something of a war between, military, police, and the cartels. And I personally was heavily in favor of that. I would like to see that happen now and them kind of root out the cartels and be done with it. For better or worse, you could argue, unfortunately, that has not happened, right? It seems like the government response caused the gangs to hide, to go into hiding and not continue their activities today, which potentially means this plays out over a longer, time period than a shorter one, which I think for me is, I'd rather the shorter timeline. But, again, overall, to Brandon's point, buenas tardes, ¿cómo está? Buenas tardes. Overall, to Brandon's point, where we are in the country is pretty isolated. It's not a place where, we're going to feel things like this, that are going on. If they do continue to go on, this area is not an area that's going to be part of that. I know Carl's wife's family just flew in yesterday. My
friends flying today.
Yeah, my mom's flying in Friday. A good friend of ours just got into town today. He had been out of the country for some months. So life is normal, business is normal. Again, we're in the center square of Vilcabamba. This is how it looks Monday through Friday. The weekends are more crowded.
And there are some common sense measures that are coming out of this that I've read about that are good. So I didn't know that at the prisons that the guards were unarmed, that the guards didn't have guns. Did you know that?
No. Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah. So apparently, so that's something Noboa has changed. So now he's arming the guards in some of the prisons, and there's a lot of, if you were involved in the campaign and following what each of the candidates were campaigning on, people drew parallels between Noboa and the president of El Salvador, Bukele, and they didn't necessarily hand in hand speak the same talking points, but they had a lot of the same concepts in how they looked at security and safety and some extreme measures. In regards to, I remember Noboa talked about using floating prisons and certain things like that, and there's reference to Bukele when El Salvador was really bad, because El Salvador was the most dangerous, or perceived to be the most dangerous country in South America for an extended period of time, way more dangerous than anything Ecuador has been, from my understanding. And now it's one of the safest, if not the safest, from some of the the things, the ideas and policies that Bukele implemented, and one of his responses to coordinated gang attacks from prisons in El Salvador was to stop the food supply into the prisons. So then, I do that again, we stop the food. So there are things they can do, and people argue the humanitarian effect, impact of some of the extreme things, much more extreme than that Bukele did, to be able to curb and really kick the corruption or the organized crime perspective or portion of the corruption out of the country to make it more safe. And there's hope here that Noboa does things in that vein in order to really curb this. To Jesse's point, right, to solve it, really bring the rain and bring all the full force of the Ecuadorian government and all their allies to root this out. But we all know that it's probably a little more complicated than that, much more nuanced in regard to how the cartels and that whole drug trade works, because the drugs aren't produced or used predominantly in Ecuador, right? So Ecuador is kind of just a vessel in this, in regard to drug production, cocaine specifically produced in Peru and Colombia, and exported primarily to the United States and Western Europe. So the retail side of the drug trade isn't here, the production isn't here. It's just kind of the conduit to getting it out there. So it's a little different. It's a little more complicated in how that system really works and how to solve the problem in Ecuador. And I don't know, did you mention, Jess, that we filmed the podcast, guys, on Tuesday morning, just when this was starting to break a little bit. So we're going to release that in 2 parts this weekend. But just keep in mind that was before some of these things happened. But you can still get some perspective on how we think about this and then what's happened since. And we'll probably do another update after next week to keep you guys informed. But it's a nuanced thing, the organized crime and drug trade and how it's related to foreign powers, foreign governments, militaries, etc. But there is hope. There's hope. There's hope here. People have hope. The Ecuadorian people have hope. Yeah, I mean, it's a wild time to be in Ecuador. We've heard from everybody I know in the States, and we were just there, and over the holidays, and everybody we know has messaged us, so that feels good to be cared about. But it's just it's like, I don't know, we don't want to minimize what's happening, because obviously it's real, it's traumatic, it's not good, it's violent, it's evil, it's complicated. At the same time, we want to show you what this region is about, and that's what our whole channel is about, is just telling you the truth about this region. Now, this doesn't apply to everywhere in Ecuador, everywhere in the world. There are commonalities between cities and towns, rural towns versus cities. You can make those, analogies throughout the world, but this type of stuff, the impact and how it impacts daily life and daily people, I mean, here it's been minimal. It's been minimal. You're seeing kids and people, people walking around, coming to church, hanging out. It's a beautiful day.
I'd like to jump in and say a few things. Right. A couple of things I wanted to bring up, though. If you are considering coming to Ecuador right now, I think probably a good advice would be to fly into Quito and not Guayaquil, unless you're going to take an extra flight from Guayaquil to Quito and then Quito to here, if you're considering, of course, coming here. The Quito, so far, all the airports are working as usual. I did read in the comments that some airlines had actually canceled their flights to Ecuador. I have not heard that from anyone traveling here. I have family coming as well in a few weeks. My mother is going to be here, and so far everything looks good. So that would be one thing, because you could fly in internationally into Quito, then take a domestic flight to Loja, and then be here in under an hour afterwards. So that's one thing. Another thing you mentioned, Brendan, there are some. I read today that President Noboa is having some meetings with the U.S. basically, and the United States and other countries are are considering sending help to Ecuador for this situation, which could, help the Ecuadorian government fight against those criminal organizations. And as Jesse said, the Ecuadorian people are really united here, including all the political parties, even though they're not aligned on many fronts. Currently, they're all aligning against the organized crime. And this situation was boiling up for a while, and it was going to happen at some point. So it's basically happening now. But I do feel really confident that the Ecuadorian military and the police and the government will do whatever they can to end this. And I've seen a lot of videos of military men, cheering the troops. Military men, I think the chief of the military in Ecuador, speaking about how they're basically declaring war on the gangs and how they're going to do whatever it takes to put an end to this. So the people of Ecuador are very hopeful, and as everybody mentioned, here in Vilcabamba, it's still paradise. we can't tell that any of this is happening here, but we know that there are certain places in Ecuador that are really going through some difficult times right now. So our thoughts and prayers are with them, and we hope the situation resolves as soon as possible.
Yeah, and there's maybe a couple of points I just want to kind of drive home, because I think the difference between a place like Ecuador and maybe even a place like El Salvador, although I've never been there, and Venezuela, for example, or Colombia, or even a place like Jamaica is a really good example of this as well, where you kind of have politics intertwined with criminality, and that creates a really conundrum, right? It makes it difficult to combat organized crime when the political parties are in bed with organized crime in one capacity or another, right? So, for example, in Venezuela, you've got whole neighborhoods that are sort of under the control of one gang or another, or a cartel, and they're also strongly hooked in with the politics, with the politicians, with the party in power, which makes a very different situation, because now the populace is not united for a common goal. That's very different than what we have in Ecuador. What I've watched here time and time again is that the people here take care of their country, and whatever sort of their goals are do get accomplished. And the Ecuadorian people, they love their country. They have a lot of pride in their country, and you've got a very united front. And you've had that for some time now in this situation. And you've got a president that seems to be fully in line and on board with that. So for me, all of that is really, really positive. One other thing that I want to address that kind of matters to me and may matter to people that, that are thinking about Ecuador or are tuning into this is that, I think a lot of folks who are leaving places like the US, Canada, Europe, and other places, there's lots of reasons that people leave, of course, but I think sometimes on that list of reasons to leave is people's concerns about sort of, overbearing government, or, just sort of less freedom than people would like, more control than people would like. And one of the things that one of the things that is different here as it relates to that, right? So if I was in the States and I was hearing about curfews and the military and the police doing operations against organized crime and things like that, I'd be worried about that, right? I'd be worried about martial law and the government overreach and taking too much power and having too much control. Here, it's just not like that at all, right? Here, the military is, some trucks and some guys and some guns and some training. It's not, it's not what we're used to, right, when we think of military. And the national police here, they're from the communities. They're tied in with the people. They are the people, right? They're not separate from the people. So you know, I'm in full support of the police and military in this operation. I'm glad they're doing it. I'm glad they're allowing it. And I have no concerns at all that that will turn into some sort of police state situation. Because again, that's just not part of the paradigm here. And it's just, you know, it's just not in the equation. So I just want, you know, I wanted to address those two things. If you guys don't have anything pertinent, I want to get to some of these
No, just hit the
comments
questions.
and questions. Yeah. So we've got a question here from Joshua. How bad is gang violence in general? Great question. Yeah, so gang violence, you know, going back 4 or 5 years, 3, 4, 5 years, was practically non-existent outside of a few bad neighborhoods and a few places.
In the whole country.
In the whole country, right. Since, you know, Venezuela collapsed and there was some immigration and there was some economic trouble during COVID, and then over the last couple of years, that's increased a bit. So we now have a little bit more gang activity, certainly in the large cities, Guayaquil, Quito, etc. And so, you know, there's been a little bit of a change with that. That being said, again, in this region, you know, it's extremely safe. So we haven't seen, you know, we've seen a slight uptick in crime here in the last couple of years, kind of the same way you've seen all over the U.S. and other places. But outside of that, I wouldn't say there's much of a difference. And, you know, this is not a place where gang violence is in general thought of as a large concern. Now, again, there's been some incidents in the last couple of years. They've been targeted. You know, a mayor was killed, a presidential candidate, as you guys know. You know, there's been some stuff that's gone on. One was in Quito, the other stuff was on the coast. But in general, you know, that's not a concern here. I would argue probably much less of a concern than the States, you know, in terms of just gang violence.
Right.
That's a big problem in the U.S. I would say it's a very small problem here. All right, let's see what else we got here. All right, well, Savannah, good luck with the paperwork. If we can help you, let us know. What do you think the cartels? If you have home invasions, yeah, I don't think the home invasions are cartel related. I mean, they may be similar people, but whatever, you know, break-ins, I don't think are probably really the cartel. Matilda says, over in Quito, everything is normal. And yeah, I think that's the whole country today. What else we got? Rafael Correa is the only one to blame for what is going on right now. Well, a lot of people feel that way. BP is reporting that some airlines have stopped flights to Ecuador. I hadn't heard about that, so thanks for that info. We'll have to check that out. Yes, I heard as well, JB, that there was, I think, 1 or 2 cars. They weren't blown up. They were basically torched with gasoline, is my understanding, in Lohi.
Did you see the videos?
I saw some of the videos.
They're like 15-year-old kids throwing lighting stuff up and then running and then doing it wrong and having to run back.
Yeah.
And trying to film it. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's still bad, but like, come on, like.
Yeah.
They were probably given like at that time. I'm assuming that, you know, between those organized gangs, they were given the memo, hey, at 2 o'clock tomorrow, let's just create turmoil wherever we are. And some people lit up some cars on fire in Loja, which, you know, it does hit close to home.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But there was a few of them, I think, I don't know how many, like 7 cars maybe?
Was it that many? Okay.
I think it was 7 cars, yeah. That's what I know.
Yeah, right. And I think you're exactly right, Carl. It was straight up retaliation for what the president declared. And, you know, and they did kill, I mean, I saw, you know, it was a police officer and maybe, you know, I don't know how many got killed, but yeah, I mean, they were having people read prepared statements, basically telling the government to cease and desist. So, you know, it was a warning, and I guess the goal is to create panic and fear, and I think it did that yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Like, you had a lot of panic and fear yesterday. Cooler heads have prevailed since, but that's kind of, yeah. All right, what else do we got here?
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that the people who stormed the TV station were all arrested.
Yeah.
I think most of them were Ecuadorian. There was one Venezuelan
Were
citizen.
most of them Ecuadorian?
Yeah.
Oh, that's surprising.
Yeah, and there were actually 2 minors. They were under 18 years old, part of the group, and they were 12 guys, I believe, something along those lines. But they were all arrested at that moment, so that's good news, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was a dummy mission.
Right.
Like, they sent these guys, into a television station, and they stayed there for a very long time.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's the dummy mission, but
They got the goons.
But
It did, yeah.
the buck stops here. Savannah, we arrived here during the strike. It was fine. Yep. We've had quite a few people arriving, actually today of all days. My wife and I are moving to Cotacachi in a few months, and this doesn't change our minds. Let's see, what else we got here? I'll be moving to Vilcabamba, but staying in the Canyons area. I'm not familiar with that, but welcome. Canyons, it says, yeah. So guys.
Buenas tardes. How you doing, brother?
All right, what else we got here? What's up, Joe? No, you're all good, buddy. Let's see. Okay. Thank you for your reassurance. My family was getting scared. Yeah, I mean, us too. These things are disconcerting. Obviously, it's wild times in the world. At the end of the day, for me, I will take the unpredictability of Ecuador for the confidence I have in the fabric of the culture and the society and just what's here and what kind of lifestyle I can create here. But still, you when stuff like that happens, of course, it makes you nervous.
Yeah, I have a buddy back in the States. His name is Fred Kacharsky, and he left Chicago. This dude's got all kinds of means, and he left Chicago because he was scared of the gangs in Chicago, and he lives in Tennessee now. So, I mean, it's nothing to laugh at. It's to keep it into perspective, guys. Keep it in perspective in regard to what you see on the news and what you're seeing from people on the ground and where it is relative to the geography. Ecuador is a small country. It's the size of Colorado, maybe a little smaller. So, when you see things in Detroit or Brooklyn or Chicago and there are parts of LA that you don't go to, that people don't go to, that doesn't keep you from going to the States. It doesn't keep you from going to even that city. It doesn't make people move. So, it's unfortunate how Ecuador kind of gets painted with a broad brush because there's so many beautiful people here and they're not running from anything. They're not, they're more than anything, they're uniting. So it's just good perspective, and it's hard to have that, I know, in today's day and age of social media without being here and without trusting folks that are on the ground here to share with you perspective, because you can see all kinds of stuff online now these days. So we really hope to give you what it's, an honest perspective on what life is like down here in Southern Ecuador, and if it appeals to you, it's worth checking out for you guys. So. Yeah, that's it. It's just important. That perspective is important to understand.
All right, Joshua says at least there aren't any 8 to 10 foot tall aliens walking around like Miami. Yeah, that was an interesting event. Not sure what to make of that, but haven't seen any. Carl's seen some aliens. We got to share that story sometime. All right, Joshua, we have short aliens here. That's hilarious. All right, what else we got? Yeah, BP is saying, there are some flights that's canceled, so we'll have to check into that. We need a Bukele approach. Yeah, I think we all agree. I think the hard-handed approach to organized crime is needed at this time, and that's kind of what we're seeing. But all right, let me just see what else we got here. Appreciate you guys having us in our prayers. Did they suspend some constitutional rights? Yes, they declared a state of exception or exemption where they've given the police and military have been mobilized to fight organized crime and have additional powers. They can enter homes. They have additional powers. I couldn't tell you what they all are, but they have some additional powers to fight organized crime right now, which again, in my perspective, not being a law and order guy, not being a toe the blue line guy in general, am totally in favor of. So, okay, let's see what else we got here. During COVID, what was it like during COVID? Did they lock down, mandate masks, etc.? Yeah, it was interesting. So, During COVID, basically, Ecuador shut down quickly, like early. It was one of the early countries to shut down. It was also one of the early countries to open up. We had kind of a pretty severe lockdown for like a few weeks. Don't quote me on that timeline, but it was a pretty short period of time where we had a significant kind of lockdown, and then things opened up very quickly after that. In Vilcabamba specifically, people aren't as accepting of those kinds of mandates, and so it was definitely a little bit looser here than in the country overall. But in the cities, people were definitely complying. So, all right, what else? Grab a few more here. Brandon's boys got to be on here. Be safe, Posse 11. So,
Posse 11. Love you guys.
Yeah, Sandra mentioned there's a curfew. Yeah, Carl was mentioning that as well. So there's a curfew from 11 to 5 currently for 60 days while they do these operations. Good to know all is well in Vilcabamba and change is just afoot. Arming prison guards, what a novel idea. Could make a difference. Yeah, absolutely. And they're talking about other stuff similar to kind of like El Salvador, you know, doing some prison boats and isolating, because a lot of the crime is actually run out of the prisons, and so they're trying to get a hold of that now. All right, what else we got here? License. Carl and Jesse and Brandon are going to start their own abundant living cartel. That might be the comment of the year. Josh was asking how to make money in Ecuador. So that's a longer topic. Good one. Lots of entrepreneurial opportunities, Josh. And if you're able to make money online and spend it here, that's a beautiful situation. But if you're entrepreneurially minded and you're interested in investments or different business ideas or different opportunities
If you're you know a biology major or a veterinarian, you can teach the kids biology. What kind of bug is that, guys?
A beetle?
Oh, you can teach the kids how to dissect beetles. Look at that thing. Oh, there goes a wing. Oh, he's still alive. Oh, dude. All right, let's see what else we got here. You guys, if looks like we don't have any more new questions, at least that we saw. Hopefully, if we missed something, we'll get back to it, guys. But if you don't have any other questions, I think we're gonna jump off. Enjoy the rest of the sunlight. Yeah, that is not legal here, Josh, quite yet. CBD is legal. Cannabis is not legal in Ecuador. Let's see, what else? A couple more just popping in. Mechanic tool. Oh, that's a good question. There's lots of tools available here. If it's a mechanic tool because you want to start a business as a mechanic, that's probably not. I'm the wrong person to ask for that. I am probably the least vehicularly inclined male, perhaps, in the world. Let's see. Any other questions here coming in, guys? Well, hey, we really appreciate you jumping on, guys. Hope this was helpful. Let's see, bringing bulk buying tennis balls in the States.
Good idea. I don't know.
It could be.
Tennis balls are not that common here. The tennis is not a very common sport, so probably could get better tennis balls. I heard baseballs, much better bringing your baseballs.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of baseball here.
We bring baseball. Yeah, it's not a sport that a lot of folks play, but we're really glad you guys jumped on. Hopefully this was helpful. Check out the podcast. Again, we filmed the podcast before most of this stuff broke out. It was just starting, but check it out this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. It'll be 2 parts. We talk about more than just that, but definitely chime in. We appreciate your support. Let us know. Send us a note to info@abecuador.com if you have specific questions that we didn't get, or leave the comments down here below. And we hope to see you guys down here someday.
So until then,
we'll see you next time. Ciao, guys.
Ciao, guys. Have a good one.